My brother looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your kid lowers this family's standards." His wife nodded. I stood up, patted my son's shoulder and said, "Then you'll live without our support." She scoffed. "What support?" So I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app and said, I never thought my own brother would humiliate my kid at our dinner table. Sunday dinners had become routine. I hosted. Mark and Tara showed up late. Their twins tore through my house like a storm. And Ethan, my son, sat quietly in the corner, sketchbook in hand, minding his business. He's never been loud. Never needed to be the center of attention. He's sharp, observant, and so good it hurts sometimes. That night he'd finally worked up the courage to talk about the app he was building. He'd been spending months learning to code after school and he'd just hit a breakthrough. It meant a lot to him. He started explaining it and halfway through Mark cut him off. He looked straight at me like he was doing me a favor and said, "Your kid lowers this family's standards." Just like that. I didn't even have time to react before Tara let out a soft laugh and nodded. He actually nodded. Like it was some truth I hadn't accepted yet. Ethan went silent. I looked at him. He blinked a few times, closed his sketchbook, and I could tell whatever spark he had been feeling just got crushed. My stomach turned. I stood up, told him to go to his room, and when he left I turned to them. "Then you'll live without our support." Tara rolled her eyes and asked, "What support?" That's when I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app and showed them exactly what support looked like. They stared at the screen and it was like something shifted. They didn't say a word, but I knew what was running through their heads. The house they just remodeled. My money. The kids' private school tuition? I'd been covering part of that for 2 years now. The SUV in their driveway. Co-signed with payments coming from me. They always acted like they were doing me a favor by showing up, like they were the successful branch of the family. They had no idea how deep my help ran. I didn't yell. I didn't give a speech. I just turned the phone around and started tapping. First, the recurring transfers to their joint account. Gone. Second, I opened a new browser tab and canceled the automatic tuition payments. Third, I clicked over to the loan site and removed my autopay on the SUV. They'd have to deal with that now. Mark sat there like he couldn't process what was happening. Tara's face was frozen. I didn't ask them to leave. I just walked back to the kitchen, scraped the plates and tossed the untouched cheesecake into the trash. They left without a word. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because cutting them off financially was just the beginning. I thought it would be clean. But they had no idea how dependent they really were. And I had no idea just how far they'd go once the money dried up. 3 days went by. No texts. No calls. Complete silence. I figured they were trying to play it cool, maybe waiting for me to come crawling back or pretending they didn't care. I knew them well enough to expect that. But on day 4 I got a text from Tara. "Hey, did you mess with our bank transfers? Something's off with the twins' tuition too." I didn't reply. 2 hours later Mark called. I let it ring out. Then he tried again. And again. The 4th time I answered and said one word. "Yes." He paused for a second and then said something like, "You're seriously doing this?" Over a comment. But it wasn't just a comment. It was years of quiet digs, smug looks, the way they treated Ethan like he was less just because he wasn't loud and flashy like their boys. That dinner wasn't the first time. It was just the most direct. I told him if he needed help now he could try lowering his own standards. I hung up. Within a week the school called Tara. Tuition hadn't gone through. Their twins were temporarily suspended from classes until it got sorted out. That's when the calls really started. She tried playing it polite at first, then guilt-trippy. I ignored every message. I wasn't being petty. I was done financing disrespect. Then the SUV disappeared from their driveway. Repossessed. Mark blamed me for that too. Apparently they thought I'd keep paying no matter what. Because that's what family does. I wasn't done though. I called my accountant and had a few things reshuffled. The house they lived in. Still technically in my name. I had bought it at a discount during the market dip and let them live there with the agreement that they'd eventually take over the mortgage. They hadn't. Not a single full payment on their own. So I made the next move. Sent a formal letter through my lawyer. They had 60 days to vacate or start paying actual market rent. Tara showed up at my door that night, alone, acting like it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't invite her in. She stood outside trying to cry, saying Mark didn't mean it. That he was under stress. That boys say dumb things. Then she said the part that showed her hand. "We're your family. You owe us that much." That's when I laughed. They'd spent years treating Ethan like he wasn't part of that family. Like he didn't count. And now suddenly I owed them something? I shut the door. What I didn't know then was how bad things were going to get, because when pride and desperation mix, people start doing stupid things. And Mark was about to do something that would make me question how well I ever really knew my own brother. About 2 weeks after I shut the door on Tara, things got quiet again. But not the good kind of quiet. The kind that makes your gut itch because you know something's building behind it. I figured they were scrambling, trying to borrow money, maybe begging Mark's in-laws. I didn't care. I was focused on Ethan. He seemed better, more at ease with the silence in the house. I didn't bring it up to him. I just let it sit. Then one afternoon I got a call from Ethan's school. Someone had sent an anonymous email accusing him of plagiarizing his app project. They wanted me to come in for a meeting. I was stunned. The school showed me the email. It was written in this stiff, almost robotic tone, and attached was a bunch of random code snippets copied from open-source sites online, claiming Ethan had lifted them. But the thing that got me? The way they described him. They called him socially stunted, said he lacks the leadership and moral character of a future developer. It was too personal to be random. I kept my cool during the meeting, then drove straight home and started digging. And sure enough, it didn't take long. The email was sent from a dummy Gmail account, but the recovery phone number linked to it? It was Tara's. I sat there just staring at my screen, not angry, numb. I couldn't believe they'd drag Ethan into it like that. It wasn't about the money anymore. This was character assassination. Of a 16-year-old. My son. I didn't call them. I didn't send a message. I went to my lawyer. The next day we filed a formal cease and desist for defamation and harassment. It included the school incident, the housing agreement violations, and a warning. One more step over the line and we'd go to court. But it didn't stop there. The day after that, Ethan came home with a cracked screen on his tablet. He said one of the twins, accidentally, knocked it out of his hands in the hallway at school. I called the principal. There were no witnesses, no cameras where it happened. Just Ethan's word, and the fact that it was Mark's kid. They were escalating. The one thing they hadn't figured out, though, was that I wasn't just cutting them off financially. I was documenting everything. Every missed payment, every message, every incident. Because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't going to end with a family apology or a sit-down. This was war. I didn't expect things to spiral as fast as they did. But looking back, maybe I should have. After the school incident with Ethan's tablet, I was done playing nice. I filed a police report, not because I expected handcuffs or headlines, but because I wanted it on record. The message was simple. If they were going to come for my son, there'd be consequences. The next step was legal. My lawyer filed formal eviction papers. Not a threat, not a warning, official action. The house was in my name. I had let them live there under a loose agreement that they'd eventually buy it off me, but they never did. They hadn't even made a full mortgage payment on their own. Now they had 30 days to leave. They were served at the door. No texts. No calls. Not right away. Instead, the next day Mark showed up at my office unannounced. Security called me from the lobby. I told them to let him up, mostly because I wanted to look him in the face. He came in looking like someone I barely recognized. Dark circles under his eyes, suit wrinkled, tie loose like he hadn't bothered to finish getting dressed. He didn't sit. Just stood there trying to figure out how to start. He said I was going too far. Said we were family. Said Ethan was just being sensitive. I didn't say much at all. I let him ramble. Then I told him flatly, this started because you disrespected my son. Then you and your wife tried to sabotage his future. You thought I'd always be the safety net. You were wrong. He tried bargaining. Asked for more time to move out. Asked if I'd consider reactivating the SUV payments. Even hinted that if I helped him get back on his feet, he'd make things right with Ethan. I told him to leave. He didn't. Until I picked up the phone and told reception to send someone up. That was the last time I saw him in person. 10 days later, a neighbor, Janine 2 doors down, texted me a photo. A moving truck in front of the house. I drove by that night and parked down the street. Watched them from a distance. Mark was in sweatpants dragging boxes. Tara was on the phone pacing, yelling at someone. The twins sat on the curb with backpacks, like no one had told them what was going on until that morning. They were out by day 24. They moved into a rundown rental across town. Not a place they'd brag about on social media. The granite countertops and backyard pool were gone. So was the leased luxury SUV, repossessed 2 weeks before. The school pulled the twins' enrollment after the second tuition default. Everything they had built their image on was cracking. I figured they'd go quiet after that. Just lick their wounds and vanish. But no. A week later I got a call from Simon, an old mutual friend. I hadn't heard from him in months. He told me Tara was filing for divorce. At first I didn't believe it. He said she'd been talking to people behind Mark's back. Spinning a story. Blaming everything on him. Said he'd manipulated her into financial ruin. That he'd burned bridges with everyone who ever tried to help. Apparently she even told someone Mark had always been jealous of me. That he couldn't handle that his little sister had more success. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. She was rewriting the entire story. In her version, she was the innocent wife dragged down by her unstable husband. She left out the part where she laughed while he insulted my kid. Left out the fake email she sent to Ethan's school. Left out how her twins physically harassed mine. But what really hit me was what Simon said last. He'd seen Mark. Said he was drinking again. Alone. Angry. Unemployed. The divorce blindsided him. Tara had drained what little was left in their shared accounts and bailed, taking the kids with her. Mark was unraveling. This man, who once stood in my house in front of my son and said he lowers our family standards, was now living in a one-bedroom apartment he couldn't afford, drinking through the afternoons and watching his entire life disintegrate in real time. I should have felt relief. Victory. Something. But I didn't. Because I wasn't finished yet. Not until Ethan got the apology he deserved. A month passed. No more calls. No emails. It was almost eerie how quiet things got. Ethan was doing better. Focused again. The school cleared him after investigating the fake plagiarism claim. Turns out one of his teachers already knew he'd built the app from scratch. She'd seen the early sketches and code. They apologized privately and quietly removed the whole thing from his record. No apology from Tara, of course. Or Mark. That was never going to come on its own. But I wasn't just sitting around waiting. I kept tabs quietly. I had to know if they were going to pull something else. At first it was small stuff. Tara telling people I kicked them out over a misunderstanding, trying to rewrite everything. Mark mostly disappeared. Off social media, off the radar. Until one of his old coworkers, Travis, reached out to me. He didn't want anything. He just wanted to talk. Said he quit their firm 3 months earlier and he figured I should know something. Mark had been using company money. Not huge amounts, not enough to set off red flags right away. But steady. Personal expenses tucked into client budgets. A couple international flight upgrades billed as strategy meetings. Some unapproved software licenses. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. And guess what? When the firm finally did a full audit after he left, they found it all. He didn't leave. He was fired. Quietly. They let him resign to avoid legal drama. That's why he'd shown up at my office that day like he'd aged 10 years. He already knew it was over. That SUV I stopped paying for? It was covering his image. The house. I wasn't saving them. I was the only thing keeping him from going under. It got worse. Tara had already known about the fraud. She'd found out before I even cut them off. But instead of doing anything, she used it. That's why she turned on him so quickly. Her divorce filing wasn't emotional, it was strategic. She filed first to protect herself legally, made herself the victim, and made sure every trace of his shady accounting pointed to him alone. Mark was done. Completely. That weekend I got another text, this one from an unknown number. Just one line. He's living in his car. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew it was real when Simon confirmed it later that week. Said Mark was sleeping behind an old gym downtown trying to keep a low profile. He still hadn't told most of his friends what actually happened. Most of them still thought I had turned on him for no reason. So I made a choice. I wrote it all down. Every transfer. Every payment. Every legal document. Every tuition receipt. Every loan I co-signed. I printed copies. Added a written timeline. And I sent it anonymously to the handful of people he'd been feeding lies to for years. Relatives, friends, even a few former coworkers. No commentary. Just facts. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I wanted truth. Because Ethan deserved that. A week later I heard from my Aunt Carol. She'd gotten one of the envelopes. She said, I had no idea. I'm sorry. For what he said. For what we believed. One by one people stopped calling him. But the real ending didn't come until. It was a Thursday evening. Quiet. Ethan was in his room working on a new version of his app. I was in the kitchen halfway through prepping dinner when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell. A knock. I opened it and standing there was Caleb, Mark's older twin. 17 now. Taller than I remembered. Hoodie. Backpack slung over one shoulder. No car. I didn't say anything at first. I just waited. He looked nervous but he didn't stall. I just need to talk to you. About my dad. About everything. I let him in. He didn't waste time. Said his mom had moved them into some townhouse upstate with her new boyfriend. Some guy she met during the divorce. She was already talking about getting remarried. Mark. He hadn't seen him in almost 2 months. Said the last time he did, Mark looked like he hadn't showered in days. He'd been sleeping in his car, barely speaking, drinking constantly, blaming everyone but himself. Caleb said he didn't come for sympathy. He came for clarity. He wanted to know if what he'd been hearing was true, about the money, the fraud, the eviction. About how I had paid for everything they used to pretend was theirs. So I told him. All of it. I kept it simple. No bitterness. No gloating. I told him the truth, what I paid, why I stopped, what Mark and Tara did to Ethan. I told him about the email. The tablet. The comments. He just sat there and listened. Then he said something I didn't expect. He always hated that you were the one people respected. Not envied. Respected. He said it wasn't about money for Mark. It was pride. That I'd been the one holding things together and Mark couldn't handle that, especially when he started slipping. He said Mark would always make jokes behind my back, about how I was just lucky, or too soft to survive in the real world. But deep down he knew the truth. I asked Caleb why he was telling me this now. He said he didn't want to turn out like him. Said he didn't want to become another adult who blamed everyone else for his own failures. Then he said something else. I wanted to say sorry. For what he said. And for laughing at Ethan. I knew it was wrong. I just didn't say anything. That hit harder than anything. I called Ethan downstairs. Caleb apologized again. Sincerely. They stood there for a moment, both unsure what to do. Then Ethan gave a small nod and said, "It's fine." And that was it. They went into the living room and started talking. About apps. About school. About coding. It was the first time I saw the bridge begin to rebuild. On its own without me forcing it. Caleb didn't stay long. Just a couple hours. But before he left he asked if he could visit sometimes. Said he didn't have anywhere else he really felt comfortable right now. I said yes. After he left I sat down and looked at the house. Quiet. Warm. Safe. Not because I won something. But because I protected it. Because I stopped letting people in who thought they could hurt us without consequence. Mark was gone. Tara had moved on. But the truth stayed. And so did the people who mattered.